Now, let us begin the last session of the day. I am Jia Kim, a journalist and news anchor for TV Joseon. It's my great honor to moderate this topic at this time of the period of time. And the topic of our session is the new, the young, and the leadership for change. Since we have 6 people on stage and we only have 60 minutes, so let me start right away and first introduce our panels briefly. We have 6 distinguished speakers here with us today. First, Mike Bishop, a former U.S. representative for Michigan, and Brian Baird, a former U.S. representative for Washington, and Thomas Lembong, a former chairman of Indonesia Investment Coordinating Board, and Cho Jung-un, the president of the Transition Korea, and former Lee Jae-young, a former member of the National Assembly, and Choi Ji-eun, international spokesperson for the Democratic Party. And just to give a brief background for the viewers, traditionally the youth of Korea faced difficulty in political participation. Recently, however, a new group of young politicians is starting to make big waves in Korean politics. To give some example, recently, Lee Jun-seok, a 36-year-old politician, was elected to the major conservative party's new leader, becoming the youngest ever leader of the mainstream party in modern South Korean politics. And whether one agrees or not, his arrival encouraged other parties to search for young, influential politicians. And please feel free to join the talks between, whenever I ask questions, you guys can just raise your hand and join. It's kind of freestyle talking discussion. I think there's also a cultural thing. In Korea, in Asia, including Korea, there's a culture to respect and follow the elders. And a lot of this is influenced by Confucian practices and beliefs that value age as well as more legal obstacles. And because of this, older generations naturally take control of decision making in politics. And it's hard for actually young generations to have speak out and influence in politics. And I would like to ask this question to Ms. Choi Ji-eun. And because you decided to jump into the politics when you were young, and first I want to ask you why and how you got into politics, and what were the obstacles in speaking out or in the party? How was it? And
well, I'm 40 years old. Because age is so important in Korea, I should reveal the information. I don't think I'm young, but since I came to politics, everybody thinks you are the youngest, and you are so young, or you are too young. So I'm fed up with the ageism of my country, actually. But yes, I was working as a senior economist at the World Bank, based in Washington, D.C., and I have been advising the policymaker in different countries on the economic policy issue, and I have been a professional experience about 16 years, and I never thought that I would be a politician one day coming back to Korea. But my current ruling party, the Democratic Party, just called me and asked if I can join the party. I was initially hesitating, but I thought that's a duty that I have to do if my country need me, someone like myself, and I felt that I have to serve for country. So that's how I quit the World Bank and coming back to the Korea. So my entry route in politics has been a bumpy ride. I ran for a seat last year in Busan constituency, and I lost, but by a small margin. And since then, I have been working in a number of issues within the party and also advising the government, while also working as a visiting professor in SNU. But as we all discussed today, I cannot agree more with the other panelists that the emergence of young politicians a global phenomenon. It's not only in Korea. I think the high unemployment and also the growing inequality could be the root causes of this issue. So young people are unhappy with the situation, and they are looking for the politicians. They can better represent them. So I think unless we address this fundamental problem of the society, I think this trend of having more younger politicians would continue. But the problem is that this situation is particularly crucial here in Korea, as moderator mentioned, where we have Confucianism as a cultural background, and the gerontocracy seems to be widely accepted. So when if we see the current administration, our Blue House, the average age of the senior official is 54 years old, which is 7 years older than a previous administration, such as Nomuyon administration. And when you appoint some government official, I agree with also Jong-hun that we don't really need to see the background, but I think the worst is just looking at the age. So I prefer they looking at the people's merits, such as their skills or their abilities, expertise, or the years of experience, than just age. So a lot of things need to be changed, and I think the current ruling party and the Blue House knows about it, and they are working towards to make such a change. However, this kind of change will not be happen just by appointing 1 or 2 young people in the senior official. I think we need to change it systematically and institutionally to support young and new politicians to enter into the politics. So, for instance, the lowering the budget or the expenses related to election could be one example. And also creating a path for young people to enter into politics and then be involved in the party politics, even starting from the teenagers and young age, could be another way. But I think the more important thing is creating the culture and shifting our culture to value the representation of the leadership. So Korean leadership has been very old. It does not represent our population or our people. So having more diverse and inclusive leadership in the Korean society, not only in politics but also society in general, is the fundamental solution that we need to achieve. And I think there's still a long way to go. But I'm very hopeful today that a lot of people are interested in young politicians, and they are asking, how is it like to be a young politician? And I think these are like great movement, and I hope that we can make some change.
Do you see yourself as a non-traditional or traditional?
In what way?
As a generation, yeah.
I feel like I'm something in between. I was born in 1980, so I'm probably the oldest among the millennials. But if we see the Korean politics, a lot of senior officials are born like around the 1960s. And now a lot of young people are upset with these older generations, and they are usually born 1990s. So something like people born in 1970s and 1980s, we do not have much representation in politics, but we also do not have many players in politics or society in general. So I think making more representation of the different generation is very important. So I'm including myself. A lot of young politicians are not asking for change of generation. We are asking for coexistence of the generation. So not only young people, but also older people need to be in the party leadership or the society leadership.
And also, I would like to point out that these days, Democratic Party of Korea and Blue House, as you said, are also taking an unconventional approach to the younger generation's desire to participate in politics. Also, this, I think it is happening because of Lee Jun-seok phenomenon also. And there are criticism that Democratic Party of Korea is enforcing one voice policy within the party, and there are also complaints from, as you saw from the articles, like some newly joined members who does not agree. They're young politicians, and they don't agree with the one voice policy that's happening. And I'm sure you can see this kind of incidences happening not only in the Democratic Party, also in everywhere in Korea, the politics. And what may be the advantage of the younger politicians and that elder politicians don't have?
Well, I think one, maybe two advantages of the younger politician, especially like myself, a newcomer. First, we don't have much relationship with the other politicians, so I don't owe anything to other people, so I don't have to work for them. I'm free to say whatever I want to say. And second, I don't know what happened before, so I'm allowed to make a mistake. I think these two are the advantage of being not only young politician but also being new politicians, newcomers.
I would like to ask Mike Bishop, even though young and old generation has lived a different period of time, of course, and they have to make the progress in order to go step forward. And what do you think of it as the best approach for different generations to work together? I actually want to ask this to all the panels. So, Mr.
Well, just coming from my short experience in politics, I think what makes it a good politician is the ability to reduce the gap between what I think is a good policy and what other people think is a good policy. So as an economist, I think sometimes maybe the best policy for market or like real estate market or job market would be A, but a lot of times my party implement the policy option which is B. So A and B is very different. But I'm learning that actually the role of the good politicians is reducing this gap and understanding what people really want and then make it work in the market. So that requires a lot of persuasive and communicational skills and also leadership skills. And I think a lot of young people, like especially those who are sitting in today's audience, grown up in the generation that we are learning those communication skills than other older generations. So I think you guys can be much better politicians than the older generation. And also in terms of the way of coexisting the different generations, I think the most direct way is you became a politician and you run for an office. But indirect way is you vote for the politicians who value the diversity and inclusion, not only in politics, but also the entire leadership of the country. So I think the people like here would perhaps implement your right to vote for right politicians in the upcoming election.